Hello, this is Troy Espy, your instructor for Library Resources 101, and this is a lecture for April 16th, 2020. So here we are again with the research process. You want to start broad with a general understanding of your topic, and then narrow and focus your topic as you go along. And this is what it looks like in terms of library resources. Now we've already covered reference materials, and we explored books in the last lecture. We're going to skip over websites until later in the semester, but for this lecture, we're going to concentrate on popular periodicals and scholarly journals. College students typically use these the most for research assignments, so let's take a closer look at them. So what are periodicals? Well, the name comes from publications produced periodically. Some examples are daily, those are typically your newspapers. Weekly, those oftentimes are magazines, although some newspapers do publish weekly. Monthly, those are mostly going to be your magazines, but some scholarly journals. Quarterly, scholarly journals typically publish quarterly. But now, with the internet, many periodicals publish instantly, so it's really become fuzzy. For example, the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel, which is a newspaper, will publish breaking news immediately online. So for election results, you don't have to wait to look at Wednesday morning's newspaper to see who won. The Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel will publish those election results instantly on its website. So let's take a look at some specific types of periodicals. First, let's look at newspapers. And newspapers usually are published daily, weekly, or instantly online. Now, newspapers are written by journalists, and they're intended for general audiences. So you should only need an 8th grade education to understand a newspaper article. And these are some examples of specific newspapers that you might have heard of. Magazines are another periodical. Magazines are published weekly, monthly. They're also published online. Magazine articles are written by journalists, and they're typically for general audiences. So again, you probably only need an 8th grade education to understand most magazine articles. There's also niche magazines, so that would be magazines that cover specifically niche areas like, say, gardening or bodybuilding. And these are examples of some different titles of magazines. Trade journals, those are also periodicals, and trade journals are magazines for professionals in a specific occupation. Articles typically are written by journalists or sometimes just the professionals themselves. And then the audience for trade journals are fellow professionals in that industry. So you're definitely going to run into some jargon. And these are examples of some trade journals. Periodicals also include scholarly journals. Scholarly journals are typically published monthly, quarterly, or sometimes semi-annually. Scholarly articles are written by experts. So you're talking your researchers, professors, scientists, doctors. And the audience for scholarly articles is fellow experts. So the authors use a lot of technical language, a lot of jargon. In fact, usually you need a PhD to understand a scholarly article. That is the intended audience. And also scholarly journals have unfamiliar titles like these ones. So you're not going to see scholarly journals, say, in the magazine rack at Walgreens. I want to spend a little more time on scholarly articles because I think they're often misunderstood. I also think they're overemphasized for college research assignments, but that would be an entire separate lecture. Now, scholarly articles go by many different names, and you see those names on the screen. Peer-reviewed is probably the most common. And remember, there is a filter in Search at UW for peer-reviewed articles. Scholarly articles sometimes also are called empirical research. Sometimes they're called primary sources, refereed, and sometimes literature reviews are even considered scholarly. There probably are other names I'm forgetting, And with all those names, it's no wonder that scholarly articles are confusing. Scholarly articles have specific criteria. I put a handout in Canvas to help you identify scholarly articles, and you'll have to use the handout for the homework assignment. The main criterion is that the article is peer-reviewed. So before the article is published, the journal sends it to experts in that field. Those experts then review and verify the information in the article. So in essence, those fellow experts or peers determine if the article gets published at all. The peer review process normally takes months. It's quite rigorous. I've been through it myself. It can be excruciating. But that's why professors like to require scholarly articles for research assignments. The information in a scholarly article has been verified by experts. So here are a few other criteria. Scholarly articles are quite long. They're at least 5 pages long. Again, they're written by experts. So again, you're talking your scientists, your doctors, your professors, your researchers, and they're written for fellow experts. So of course, the authors use technical language. So if you're not an expert in that field, you might struggle to understand the writing. At least I do. Now, the really important thing about scholarly articles and how to identify them is that scholarly articles should always include references. Now, sometimes those references are called bibliographies or works cited or even footnotes. So if there are no citations, that's usually a dead giveaway that the article isn't scholarly. So I'm going to show this slide again because I think it's worth repeating. Now, scholarly articles are credible. They've gone through a rigorous review process. The information in scholarly articles has been verified. However, credible sources aren't limited strictly to scholarly articles. I would consider reference materials, book chapters, and most newspaper and magazines as credible. The information in those sources typically is reliable, even if it hasn't been peer-reviewed. In fact, I think CQ researcher reports are credible, but those aren't technically scholarly. Those reports have not been peer-reviewed. They're not written by experts, they're written by journalists. So every credible article isn't scholarly. Articles have to meet strict criteria to be considered scholarly. And that's important to remember for your homework essay. I will give you an article to analyze and tell me if the article is scholarly and why or why not. If it's scholarly, it has to meet strict criteria outlined in the handout. So look at the handout carefully. I know it can be confusing, so please contact me or any UWSP librarian if you need help determining if a source is scholarly. The UWSP library subscribed to more than 130,000 periodicals. Only about 1,700 of those are in print, and those are located on the second floor. And those are shelved alphabetically by journal title. Most of our titles are available online, and you can access them through the UWSP Library's website. And I'll show you how to access them next. Those 130,000 periodicals are listed in Journals A to Z, which is a button on the UWSP Library's homepage right here. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that tab, Journals A to Z. Journals A to Z includes both print and online periodicals. We actually own some periodicals both online and in print, and we'll see an example of that in just a minute. So in Journals A to Z, you can browse periodicals alphabetically. I don't recommend that though. There are just too many of them. Or you can search up here in the search bar by journal title or ISSN number. I won't bore you with ISSN numbers. So sometimes your professor will suggest that you look for articles in a specific journal. Now, if you try accessing that journal through Google, the journal probably is behind a paywall. And trust me, some of these journals are quite expensive. We pay up to $9,000 per year for just one journal. So let's say that your professor recommended the Journal of Adolescence. Do the UWSP library subscribe to that journal? Well, how you would find out is by using journals A to Z. So let's see if we do own that journal. So I'm just going to type in the title, Journal of Adolescence. Try to spell it correctly. And then I'm going to click on the search icon here. So it turns out that we do own the Journal of Adolescence both online, right here, and in print on the second floor. Now, I much prefer the online access, and that definitely comes in handy during a pandemic when you can't get to the second floor anyway. So under the Journal of Adolescence, I'm going to click on here, Online Access. And when I click on Online Access, you are going to notice that we carry the Journal of Adolescence actually in two different databases. So what is the difference? Well, these databases carry different years of the journal. So this first database here, Elsevier Science Direct, carries the Journal of Adolescence from 1995 to the present. And then in this database, Clinical Key, it carries a Journal of Adolescence from the year 2007 to the present. I'm just going to go ahead and click on Elsevier because it has a broader range of the journal. So let's take a look. I clicked on Elsevier Science Direct, and it takes me to the database, and then it takes me to the Journal of Adolescence, and this is what is called a landing page. And if I scroll down a little bit here, you look at a box titled Explore Journal Content. I want to explain what these options are here. So the first one here is called Latest Issue. And like the name implies, it is the most recent issue of the journal. And we're going to look at that in just a second. Next is a link called Article Collections. And article collections are special volumes on a particular topic. So for example, there was a volume of the journal devoted entirely to bullying. And you can click on Article Collections to take a look at it. Next here is a link called All Issues. So I'm going to go ahead and click on this one here, All Issues. So when I click on All Issues, it actually starts with the most recent volume. That is this one here, Volume 81, that is still in progress, set to be published in June 2020. And then if you keep scrolling down, it actually goes all the way back to the very first volume of this journal that was published in 1978. Well, let's go up to the first one here, Volume 81, the most recent edition. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that link, Volume 81. And then the journal is going to list the individual articles that appear in Volume 81. And what you're going to notice is that below each article is a link for download PDF. So here's an article on dating violence. If I wanted that one, I could just click on Download PDF to get the full text of that article for free. So browsing current issues of journals can be a good way of finding relevant sources or for coming up with topic ideas, such as dating violence. Now, if you already have a topic, there is a search bar up here that will search just the Journal of Adolescence. So let's say that you're writing a research paper about social media. Well, social media definitely affect adolescents. So the Journal of Adolescence might be a good place to look. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to enter some keywords into the search bar up here, and we're going to search just this one journal, just the Journal of Adolescence. So I'm going to use social media, the Boolean operator of the quotation marks, and I'm going to click on the search icon. And I get 98 results. But look at the results. They are all just spot on. So here we go, the first one. Social media use and risky behavior in adolescence. Being liked or not liked. problematic social media use and sleep disturbances. Again, they're all just spot on, and they all have this download PDF link right under them. So I could just access the full text of these articles just like that. Now, you would find these identical articles in Search at UW or Google Scholar, or maybe even in Google, but the articles would be buried among thousands upon thousands, maybe millions of other results. So more and more frequently, I find myself searching directly in individual journals. You get fewer results than in Search at UW or in Google Scholar, but the results usually are much closer to your topic. So let's say that you needed an article from the Journal of Adolescence that was published in 1985. The UWSP library doesn't own the print or online version of the Journal of Adolescence from 1985. We don't go back that far. So how do you get an article from 1985? Well, you could pay $40 on Google, that's one option, or you could get the article for free using Interlibrary Loan. And that is one of the homework questions for this week. So to access Interlibrary Loan from the library's homepage, you want to click on Borrow and Request. So I'm going to click on Borrow and Request. And then over here there's a box of quick links. You can log on to ILL, which stands for Interlibrary Loan. So I'm going to click on Log On to ILL. And I'm just going to log in with my UWSP username and password. I don't have to create a new account. I'm already signed in, so go straight to the UWSP Interlibrary Loan form. Now you'll notice that the default is to request a book, a DVD, or a music score. However, you can request articles through Interlibrary Loan. It's over here in the left-hand column. Under New Request, you can just click on Article. Click on Article and then fill out the web form containing the article's citation information. We will get the article from another library and then send you a link to the PDF. It takes about 2 days to get an article. Sometimes it's much faster though. So if you don't want to spend $40 on an article, just use Interlibrary Loan. So speaking of free articles, Search at UW has millions of articles. They're all full text and they're all free. So let's do a sample search. Let's stick with the topic of social media. So I'm going to put those search terms into the Search at UW search bar, and I'm going to use the Boolean operator of the quotation marks. So I'm going to do social media. I want those two words together as a phrase, and I'm going to click on the search icon. And I get over 1.2 million results. But I'm specifically looking for articles. And we can filter to just articles. In fact, we have a few different options for those filters. So if I scroll down here, I can go down to resource type. And the first one here filters newspaper articles. That's pretty self-explanatory. Next one is another filter called articles, and that is going to include scholarly articles, but also magazine articles and trade magazine articles. Okay. And then under there is reviews. Now the reviews filters, that is also for articles, because those are going to include book reviews, movie reviews, and literature reviews. Now let's say that we're looking specifically for scholarly articles. The thing to remember about scholarly articles is that those are peer-reviewed, and that is a filter that you can use in Search at UW. So I'm going to apply this filter, peer-reviewed. Now that knocks us down to 170,000 results, but they're all articles and they were all published in scholarly journals. Okay. Now, every article in Search at UW, whether it's scholarly or not, is full text. If an article isn't full text, we don't bother showing it to you. Okay. Now, this next part is going to be review, but it's worth practicing because students get confused accessing full text articles in Search at UW, and I really don't blame them. It can be confusing. Now, there are two ways to get the full text of an article in Search at UW. One way is simple, and the other one takes a few clicks. I'll show you both ways. So let's start with the easy way first. So for some articles, but not all of them, you will see a link called Download PDF listed under the article. And just like it says, all you have to do is click on the Download PDF, which I'm going to do now. And then Search UW is going to retrieve the PDF of the article. It's really that simple. 1 or 2 clicks. There it is. So really easy. Now let's look at the harder way to do it. Not all of the articles in here have that download PDF. So let's say that I wanted this second article here just titled Social Media. There's no download PDF link. So when you see an article you want and there is no download PDF link, you want to click on this green Online Access link. So that's what I'm going to do for this article. Click on Online Access. And when you click on Online Access, it brings you to this confusing View It screen. Okay? And I don't see the full text of the article. And this is where most students get stuck. So I'm going to try to explain what's going on. So under the View It screen here, Search at UW is telling me that the full text of this article is found in this database, Elsevier Science Direct. Now, for some articles, you will see several databases listed. You might see 10 databases listed. Now, to get to the full text, you just want to click on any of the databases listed. So for this one, only one database is listed, and that's the database I'm going to click, Elsevier Science Direct. So I click on that database. It takes me to that database. It takes me directly to the article I want, and then you're going to notice there is a download PDF option here. So I am going to click on the download PDF, and there it is. And I didn't have to pay. It took me a few more clicks, but I didn't have to pay $40 on Google. So that is both ways that you can access full text articles in Search at UW. So you definitely can find articles in Search at UW. Another place to find articles is to search directly in UW-SP Library databases. Now, I've thrown that term around a lot in this course, databases. But what exactly are databases? Well, the UW-SP Library subscribes to 2 types of databases: periodicals databases, which I'm going to talk about now, and specialty databases, which I'll talk about in just a minute. Now, periodical databases are like what they sound. They are a collection of online periodicals. So that means that they're a collection of journals, magazines, newspapers, and trade publications. There might be thousands of them in one database. Now, the database also contains articles from those periodicals. So there might be millions of articles in one database. So when you're using a periodical database, you're actually searching through thousands of periodicals simultaneously, trying to find articles on your topic. So the UW-SP Library, we subscribe primarily to periodical databases. However, we do supply access to specialty databases. So instead of collections of periodicals, those specialty databases are collections of, say, online videos, or streaming music, or digital images, or statistics, or business profiles, or ebooks. And we've already looked at databases of ebooks. We're going to look at databases, specialty databases, later in this course. You definitely can find articles in Search at UW, but another place to find articles is to search directly in periodical databases. For a listing of library databases, you want to click on this tab here called Find Databases from the UW-SP Library's homepage. So I'm going to click on that tab now. On this web page, it lists all 299 databases from the UW-SP libraries. Now, normally there are about 270 databases listed here, But because of the pandemic, several vendors have provided free access to their databases. And that's just to make it easier for students to find online sources when they can't visit the library in person. So that number can definitely fluctuate. I'm guessing 299 is an all-time high. And I know it can be a little bit overwhelming. However, there are different methods for selecting databases on this web page. Now, if you know the name of the database you're looking for, say you're looking for a Credo reference, you could actually just type in the title of the database right here, and then it would retrieve it for you. You can also browse databases alphabetically. I do that quite a bit. Or you can search by type. What does that mean? So up here there's a pull-down menu that says all database types. I'm going to go ahead and click on that. And let's say that you are looking specifically for databases that contain streaming video. Well, you look here, we have 21 of them. So you can just click on there and it would list all 21 databases that contain streaming videos. You can also browse by subject, and that's usually the one I use the most. So when you browse by subject, you can pick a database based on your research topic. So let's say you're writing a college research paper on a topic related to sports. So you can scroll down here, and you'll notice that is one of the subjects, sports and wellness. So I would pick sports and wellness, and there are 14 databases on the topic of fitness, sports, and wellness. And what we do is we try to put the best bets up here at the top. Now, one of my favorites is this one here, Sport Discus. I promote it to students all the time. So let's take a closer look. So now we are in the database Sport Discus. And Sport Discus is a collection of periodicals all related to sports. In fact, if you click on this tab up here, Publication, it will actually show you a listing of all the different periodicals that are contained in Sport Discus. There are probably thousands of them. So when you're searching in Sport Discus, you're actually searching all of these periodicals simultaneously for individual articles. Let's give it a try. So a sport I like to play, but I'm not very good at, is Ultimate Frisbee. So I'm going to put in those search terms into the search box up top, Ultimate Frisbee, and I'm going to click on Search. So Sport Discus searches across all of the periodicals, and it finds 107 articles in those periodicals. And if you look at the individual articles, you can see that they're really good. Okay? And also, if you scroll down, what you're going to notice is that most of the articles in Sport Discus are full text, or they're at least linked to full text. Okay? But unlike Search at UW, not all articles are full text in Sport Discus. So you can still get the full text though. You want to use the Find It button, and that's what we're going to explore next, the Find It button. So let's say we wanted this article here, Ethic of Care and the Competitive Ultimate Frisbee Playing Experience of Young Women. It looks like an awesome article, but the full text is not available here in Sport Discus. But perhaps the full text of the article is available in another UW-SP library. To find out, we want to click on this Find It button. So if we click on the Find It button, Find It is going to search for the full text of that identical article in the UW-SP library's 200 databases. And it will tell me, it kicks you back to Search at UW, and then tells you if the full text is available. Now sometimes it's not, and it'll say no full text available. In that case, you can go ahead and click on the Interlibrary Loan link, and you can get the article through Interlibrary Loan. Now this article, it happens to be available in full text in another UW-SP library database called Taylor and Francis. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that database, Taylor and Francis. There is the article that I wanted, and there is the PDF. So I'm going to click on PDF, and then I'm going to download it. So although I discovered the article in Sport Discus, the full text was not available in Sport Discus. So I clicked on the Find It button, and that led me to a different database that did have the full text, and I was able to download the PDF. So if you're in our different databases, and remember we have 200 of them, and not all of them are full text, and you find an article that you want, but the full text isn't available, always try that Find It button. Now that you've watched the lecture, please complete the quiz. The quiz is due before midnight on Monday, April 20th. The quiz is worth 10 points, and you will lose 1 point for each day that it is late. Now, the quiz includes an essay worth 5 points. I ask you to analyze an article and determine if the article is scholarly. Now, unlike our previous discussion post, there is a right or wrong answer. However, I'll give you partial credit if you argue convincingly. Now, this is important. I'm not asking you if the article is credible. I'll tell you right now, the article is credible. I'm asking you specifically if the article is scholarly. Now, to qualify as a scholarly article, it must meet strict criteria that I've outlined in this lecture and that are included in the handout. Now, I've purposely picked a tough article to classify. You don't need to read the article word for word. However, you do need to analyze it carefully and provide specific examples in your answer. Now, if you get stuck, I'll be happy to walk you through it. So just contact me and we can meet on the phone or via Zoom. So hang in there. It's tough, but I know you can do it, and you can ask me or any of the UWSP librarians for help.